Afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We are welcoming author Sandy Nork. So I'll begin our program today with a short introduction of our featured author. This bio is from her website, which I will post a link to in the chat. It's a great website. So Sandy Nork has been a reader since she first met the Dana girls when she was 7 and she became a writer by 10. She made her first dollar at age 12, writing a catchphrase for a local radio station. And I'd love to know if you remember what that catchphrase was.
No, actually, I do not.
You don't remember.
But I remember the dollar.
Oh, wow.
Great telling.
That's great. Okay, so in other lives, Sandy has been a fabric inspector, an envelope stuffer, an inventory control clerk, and a customer service rep for welding wire. She was also a fellow librarian for 23 years before she retired. Although she says that once you're a librarian, you're pretty much always a librarian. But while she's lived those lives, she was also a writer. Sandy is currently a member of Pen Writers, a statewide and beyond organization for writers. She was a participant in A Novel Idea, a year-long study program of novel writing offered by the Perry County Council of the Arts in Newport, Pennsylvania. She was honored to have one of her short stories chosen to be included in the compilation Strange Magic, edited by Catherine Jordan and published by Sunbury Press. Sandy's husband, Bill, is a musician who inspired her Valerie Sloan books, a mystery suspense series about a Japanese American insurance investigator who searches for valuable instruments to go missing. She often bumps into a crime family who interferes with her work and life. Special Risk, the first book in the series, is about a guitar, a dentist who used to be a one-hit wonder band, and a pair of ne'er-do-well thieves. In addition to being a writer, Sandy considers herself a musical tourist, coffee drinker, baking devotee, and technology aficionado. She loves tiny toys and is a friend of all dogs. Well, most dogs. Sandy is active on social media, so visit her website and links to her Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, which I can post on here too, into the chat. And so now I'll turn the program over to Sandy and we can learn about her writing process and books. Thank you for joining us, Sandy.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, and thank you to the State Library for having me for this program. I wanted to start this by talking about my book, Special Risk, which I have in front of me, and I'm going to read a brief section of it. I should begin by telling you that special risk is an insurance term, and it has to do with coverage for a musical instrument that's used outside the home. As you've heard, the main character is Valerie Sloan. She is 40, and she has had her world turned upside down. After working for an insurance conglomerate for about 20 years, she's lost her job. And so she's looking for another job, and she gets a call from her old friend, Harry Zimmer, who wants her to come and be an investigator for his new company. She does go work with him and finds out that her first case is to find the stolen guitar that belonged to the dentist, Reuben Cafferty, who used to be in a one-hit wonder band. That was back in the 80s that he did that. Cafferty wants his guitar back for sure, but she also discovers that a Japanese gang is after the guitar as well, and of course her on behalf of the insurance companies. One of the problems with this investigation is that Valerie can't drive, or doesn't drive, I should say. It is a choice. And because of that, Harry knows this and decides to assign his clerical assistant, Rocky Russo, to be her driver. I want to read to you briefly from chapter 9 of the book. It's where you first get a real sense of how Valerie and Rocky are going to work out together. So this is chapter 9 from Special Risk. Chestnut Hill, Philadelphia, PA, June 16th, 2009, 8:30 a.m. Long before Rocky turned the corner onto Moman Street, Valerie heard rock music thumping inside Rocky's car. Valerie pictured the birds in Pastorius Park dropping out of trees with paralyzing heart attacks, their tiny little ear holes hemorrhaging. Rocky must be hearing impaired, she thought. No, just inconsiderate. Rocky screeched to a halt in front of Valerie's house. Valerie wasn't sure she wanted to get in the car, but figured she had no choice. Rocky turned the music down as Valerie folded her long legs into the small car. "Morning, boss," Rocky said, smiling as bright as the June sun outside. "I'm not your boss," Valerie grumbled. She settled into the passenger seat, staring at her driver. Today, Rocky wore jeans with torn sections slashed across each leg. A snug red jacket that clashed with the fuchsia in her hair covered a tight white button-down shirt. She topped the whole look off with a generous heap of eye makeup and a newsboy cap. Valerie wasn't sure what sort of statement Rocky wanted to make with this outfit, but it was quite different from her own tailored gray suit, white blouse, and black heels with matching black attaché. "Is there a reason you're dressed this way?" Valerie said, trying hard not to sneer. "What's wrong with what I'm wearing?" "It's pretty casual for work," Valerie said. "Well, in case you didn't notice, you're way overdressed," Rocky shot back. We don't work downtown." "Oh, I noticed all right." Valerie kicked some White Castle fast food papers away from her with distaste. "Do you live in this car?" "No, I have an apartment in Manayunk. That's from last night. Just throw it in the back with the others." Rocky adjusted the volume on the music and stepped on the gas. The car lurched away from the curb, the tires squealing enough to wake Valerie's entire neighborhood if they weren't already up. Valerie gritted her teeth, tossing the wrapper into the back seat with the tips of 2 fingers. She checked her seatbelt one more time to make sure she was buckled in as tightly as possible. "Are you sure you know where we're going?" "Of course I do. I used to date a guy who lived in Phoenixville." "You relax and leave the driving to me." "Relax?" Valerie could feel herself stiffen as Rocky pulled up tight to the bumper of the Mercedes in front of them. "Yeah, it's going to take us about 45 minutes to get there. Phoenixville isn't exactly next door to Philly, you know." "It didn't look that far away on the map," Valerie said. "Well, it is." "Did you know that they call it Blobville?" Rocky asked, turning the music down a little. "No, I didn't." "The movie house in Phoenixville, the Colonial, was used in the movie The Blob in the 50s. They have a festival celebrating the movie every year. My boyfriend was really into sci-fi and old movies, so we went to it. It was fun watching everyone run out of the theater screaming when they recreated the scene." "You're kidding, right?" She had no idea what movie Rocky was talking about. Though Valerie once attended a lecture by Camille Paglia at the University of the Arts, she had little interest in popular culture. "No, I'm not kidding. Anyway, it's a bit of a ride," Rocky said, still managing to stay within inches of the Mercedes. "I brought plenty of tapes along to play for you." "Tapes?" Valerie asked. "Yeah, I brought tapes of some of my favorite bands from the 80s, since you're not very familiar and all." "Oh, goody," Valerie said. "Let's start with Pat Benatar. She rocks." And that should tell you something about their relationship. So the point of the story is, where is the guitar? And what does the guitar have to do with Valerie? Because it's more than just her job to find it. It has to do with her long dead mother. And can Valerie find the guitar, solve the case, and stay alive? If you haven't read Special Risk, you'll need to find the answers to those questions. The book took about 10 years to write, and before you all think, "That's insane," it often happens because it's a gradual process. And I want to talk to you a little bit about where it came from. The book started with Bill, my husband, who is a musician and primarily a guitarist. He went to the Philadelphia Guitar Show and brought home photos of the guitar I refer to in the book. It was a 1958 Gibson Les Paul Standard. It was offered for sale at the show for $225,000. Now, at first, we didn't really get too excited about it, but we kept talking about who would go to a guitar show and sell something that was worth that much there live, and who would actually go buy it. That's how I started the book. And then we heard a story that was real intriguing about a church in Pennsylvania whose pastor filed for insurance money for some stolen instruments. He filed with 2 different insurance companies, and he filed for close to $350,000. Naturally, his insurance companies did some investigating and found out it was a case of fraud. So that contributed to the book as well. But then I read Tokyo Vice by Jake Adelstein. Jake Adelstein is a reporter who spent a lot of years in Japan covering the Yakuza. Now, Jake is an American, and at the time he wrote the book, he had come back to America because they were looking for him. They were interested in eliminating him, let's say. But one of the stories he tells at the back of his book is about one of the Yakuza bosses coming to the United States to have surgery, life-saving surgery. And I got interested in the idea that they could come and go in the United States without us really looking very hard at them. And I also thought about how the gang structure might transfer to the United States as well. We might call them something else, but it would transfer to our social structure. Initially, I wanted to set the book in Harrisburg, but as I thought about what would be appropriate, I thought about using Chinatown, which is in Philadelphia. Center City East is how they describe it. And once I discovered that, and I had seen Chinatown, I had been around Chinatown, knew the sounds and the smells and what it was like there, I decided I wanted to use that. And then I started looking around Philadelphia for other locations where I could set parts of the book. With all those elements in my head, I started thinking about who my characters should be. Valerie, of course, is the main character, and you can obviously see I'm not Japanese at all. Valerie is Japanese American, and when I created her, I wanted to make her someone who was distant from her background, someone who was a pretty isolated individual and kind of stuck in her life. Losing her job was a big impetus to make things change for her, but there were lots of things about her that indicated how stuck she was. All of this became part of Valerie's backstory. Sometimes people ask me if I was Valerie Sloan or if I am Valerie Sloan, since I'm still writing about her. She's not me, but we do share some behaviors: fear of change, being stuck at times and not wanting to move forward, some intolerance of other people, especially people who are not like us. But I also think that in the book, I show that she can change. And all of these things I think are universals and make her a universal character. Now, when you're writing a book, there are thousands of decisions you have to make like that. For me, it took a long time to do it. I'm a slow writer, and it took me a while to get all of the elements in place and get a story together. These are just a few of the decisions I made. But once I created Valerie's world, I also knew that I wanted to keep going with it. And that's why I decided to go, at the time when I started this, I was thinking it would be a 3-book arc where I really discuss her connection to the Japanese factor in her life. Now, the next book is Flood Risk, and that will be set in Nashville during the flood of 2010. This Special Risk was in 2009. Flood Risk will be in 2010. And as a little bonus for you today, I actually have the copy, the cover of the new book behind me, and I will post that on social media later today. So, fiction. It sounds like a great life, doesn't it? You sit around all day and you create your story and you sell it for lots of money to a big publisher, and you win lots of awards, and you have people lined up to buy your book, and it's really exciting, right? Not really. It doesn't really work like that. But every writer has a different path, and for some writers, that actually happens. I'm not one of them. I expected not to be one of those when I started this particular book. As I said, I've always been a writer, and during the 80s, I attempted to get published with a major publishing house. I had an agent for about a year. She worked with me on a romance I was trying to sell, and you know, it was a very exciting time for me. I actually had a publisher contact me. We had some discussions. That deal fell through, but the agent felt it was worth working with the book for another year. So for a whole year. So at that point, once the year was over, we felt after discussion that it had gone far enough and I needed to move on. And of course, for me, as I say, sometimes that's hard to do. I decided after that fell through and I wasn't feeling like my writing was developing the way I wanted it to, I got a full-time job, went back to work. I had taken a little time off to try to get published. Um, Once I went back to work, I also decided I needed to finish my education because I hadn't finished a college degree. So I attended college while I worked full-time. I wasn't writing very much fiction at that time because I was taking the classes and working all day. So that took up most of my time. I did graduate with a degree in English, but I also went on, you'll love to hear this, I went on to get my master's degree in library science. Now, I had been working for the York County Library System for a long time, but once I got my master's degree, I came to work for the state library for a while, and I worked in cataloging for about a year and a half. And then I also worked with library development for about a year and a half. During this time, during the 90s, in fact, I had joined Pen Writers. Now, we've already heard Pen Writers mentioned here. Pen Writers was originally organized by a group of Pittsburgh writers, but by the time I joined, it had spread throughout the state, hence the name Pen Writers. Today, they include members from other states, and they also include some international members. It's a wonderful organization. They are dedicated, and we'll tell you this right on their front page of their website, penwriters.org, that they're dedicated to helping writers at all levels of experience. They'll answer writing-related questions. They can help you make connections with people you need to make connections with as a writer. They hold a conference once a year that I highly recommend. They also offer online classes that I highly recommend. They're not expensive, and that's an important factor when you're just starting out in the writing world. Their local groups often offer writing workshops as well, and that's beneficial. Some also offer critique groups, and this I want to mention especially because I do credit them in Special Risk. I was part of the Fourth Wednesday critique group in New Cumberland while I was writing Special Risk, an active member at that time, and I'm telling you, they were invaluable in helping me refine parts of the book. But when I finished Special Risk, I had already decided not to look for an agent or a traditional publisher. It was sort of a been there, done that, really don't want to repeat that experience again sort of feeling. But I also knew that basically my book covers a lot of different arenas genre-wise. You can consider it a mystery, a suspense book, maybe even a thriller book, although that's probably pretty mild for a thriller book. You might even see cozy elements in it, but at heart, it's a crime family book. And that's a very small portion of the writing that's out there these days that has a lot of popularity. Knowing that and knowing my niche was pretty small, I decided that I would not go the traditional route at all. Now, let me talk a little bit about the different levels of publishing at this point. Years ago, it was a dream to have one of the New York publishing houses publish your work. The idea was that they paid you in advance for your manuscript. Maybe had you edited a little bit, they'll assign someone to work with it and work with you. They would design a cover. They would design the interior of the book. They would arrange to have it printed and distributed. And if you were really lucky and someone they really believed in, you also got to do some promotion for your book at their expense. Now, that still happens today. It just happens with fewer and fewer writers. So knowing that, you might want to, as a writer, think about a small press. Now, a small press, just to give you an idea, the large publishers publish between 15 and 17% of the books out there. Small presses publish closer to 50%. And so that's a good option for an author who maybe won't attract a large publisher, but the smaller publishers maybe have a focus in your area that they might be more interested in having your book. Now, the difference is there's more negotiation in how much of an advance, if any, you get. Some of them don't even pay in advance. Some just try to help you get the book out there. So they may have some cover help for you, or they may have interior design help for you, some editing help perhaps, some promotion help perhaps. They often think differently than the big publishers when it comes to promotion, and that can be helpful to some authors. But for the rest of us who decide that maybe that's also not the way you want to go, because you also give up a certain amount of autonomy over your book, for those other authors, then you want to think about self-publishing. In any case, just remember you need to get some familiarity with contracts and understand what you're paying for when you pay for things. In the case of the large publisher or the smaller press, you want to know what it is you're negotiating with them for. So self-publishing is a different world only in the sense that you are responsible for all the decision-making, all the cost, all the production, everything that's done with the book is really up to you. Now, having said that, I will also say you might want to hire help. That's a cost, yes, but you don't need to be the expert in everything. When I wrote Special Risk, I was not an expert at, say, cover design. I'm not a graphic designer. I hired somebody to do that. My designer also helped me with designing the interior of the book. While I can edit other people's work, I did not edit my own past a certain point. I started to have other people look at it and give me feedback. So those are areas that you might want to get help with. And I'll talk more about that as we talk more about self-publishing. You're probably already familiar with some of the really popular self-published authors. Everybody has got to have heard by now of E.L. James, who wrote the 50 Shades of Grey books. She's probably the best known and highest circulated self-published author out there. Obviously, they made movies of the books. There's Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian. And The Martian eventually also got picked up by a big publisher and became a movie. Lisa Genova wrote the book Still Alice, and again, sold enough books that she interested a publisher and had a movie made of her book. If you are interested in having your book picked up by a publisher once you are a self-published author, that rarely happens, and you probably would have to sell about somewhere between 10,000 and 25,000 copies of your book to even be considered by a publishing house. But there are reasons to self-publish, and I've already hit on one, and that is control. You have control of everything you do with the book, the time you invest in it, the cost you spend on creating it. The look of the book is really up to you. Even though you hire, in my case, even though I hired someone to do the book cover, we had some back and forth. I told her what elements I was looking for, gave her a summary of the book. She came back to me with a cover that I thought was wonderful and really reflected what the book was about. If you want to see oversee, you also will get a chance to decide how it's promoted too. And again, we'll talk more about that. If you want to oversee every step of the process of your book, you definitely want to self-publish. If you already have a traditional publisher, you may come to a point in your career where the publisher doesn't want to publish something that you want to publish. That sometimes happens, and you sort of come to a parting of the ways a little bit, but you don't really have to. You can self-publish that book and still be traditionally published for other books. They often call that hybrid publishing if you're interested in the term for it. If you are publishing something that appeals to just a small niche, then that's something you might want to talk to a small press about, or again, self-publish, which is what I decided to do with Special Risk. So how do you do that self-publishing stuff? Well, I'm not an expert. I've only published one book. I'm working on the second one. But this is some of what I've learned so far. Write the best book you can. That's imperative. Have it edited professionally. That may cost you some money, but don't have your closest friend your family member. Those people want the best for you, but you're really looking for someone who has edited books before, someone who is an author and knows what kind of information you need about your book in order for it to be the best book you can sell. So you want to have it edited professionally. After you have it edited professionally, then you want to look for beta readers. Now, beta readers are not family and friends. These are people who will look at your book, give you some feedback on it, and hopefully in exchange for a free copy of the book, say, they will post a review of the book. And this is gold if your book gets good reviews. If it doesn't get good reviews, you might want to go back to the drawing board a bit. But I was lucky, my beta readers liked my book. So I was very happy with the reviews that they gave me. Then, of course, after that, you have to decide how you want to publish it. Are you going to publish it just as an ebook? Are you going to have a paperback, a hardback, an audio copy of it? I decided on just ebook and paperback. I felt that that's where the subject matter would fit best. Then you want to set pricing. That again is up to you, but look at the market, see what people are charging for the type of book that you're writing. And then set a publication date, of course. The next thing I've spoken about several times, you want to create a beautiful and appropriate eye-catching cover. And again, if you can't do it, have someone professionally do it. Have them also lay out the interior if you don't know how to do that. There are programs that can help you with this. It's not unlearnable. I simply chose not to do it because I had a designer that I really liked and trusted. After that, you want to develop a marketing plan. Now, this is something you can do on your own or something that you can consult with other people for. You want to create your author presence on social media and a website. A website is critical. With social media, it's interesting. I think for a while, writers were under the impression they had to be active everywhere, and it got to be really overwhelming. But to be honest, you really only need to pick one or two and pick the ones that you're familiar with and comfortable using and use those to promote your work. With mine, my social media, I am on mostly on Facebook and Instagram. I do very, very, very occasionally post to Twitter, but in all those cases, I'm really comfortable with posting both my author work and my personal work. So you can take a look at those and see how that works out. After that, you want to publish your book and promote your book. So one of the costs that a lot of authors don't think about is the cost of physical books. And it's important because if you're going to promote your book, one of the things you're going to do is do in-person events. And you want to have a stack of books at your side to sign and sell to people. So one of the preliminary costs of promotion is the cost of getting those books in hand. And for those of you who work with books all the time, it's not unusual for a single author to go directly to Ingram or Bowker to have their books published. However, you can use Kindle, Amazon really, because they do print on demand. You can also use them to do that. Now, each one of the steps I've just laid out for you has multiple sub-steps, of course, and it takes time. Another reason it took 10 years. But it depends on how you want to handle your book. If you can do a lot of this yourself, you'll cut down the amount of time and negotiation and cost. And if you do that, that's great. And what you just need to do is think it through step by step. And again, it takes time and thought, but you can do it. Now, there are lots of resources out there for anyone who wants to self-publish. I'd begin with the Alliance of Independent Authors. They go by the acronym ALLI, A-L-L-I. And they are a professional association of self-published writers. And if for no other reason, go to their website at ally.com and read Self-Publishing Today, an overview. That will help you a lot with the general feel of the territory right now. The next one I would recommend is Readsy. Readsy is an educational website for authors, but one of the big features of Readsy is that they will connect you with editors, designers, marketers, anyone who can help an author. They are pre-vetted people so that you can look at that person's resume and pick someone who fits your book, fits what you want to do with your book. I actually used an editor from Readsy and she was fantastic. The next resource I'd recommend is janefriedman.com. Jane Friedman is a nonfiction writer basically, but she covers a lot of fiction information on her website. She knows a lot about publishing in general, worked for Writer's Digest for, I think it was over 20 years, among other things. I mean, she's done a lot with authors and writing in her life. So she's a highly recommended resource to me, including her own list of recommended resources. I've already mentioned Pen Writers a couple of times. This is a group that helps writers at every stage of their writing and publishing process. I would especially suggest the yearly conference and their critique groups. It's a low cost to join them. It'll help cut some costs for things like their online classes and the conference entrance fee. It's well worth it to join them, I think, if you're writing. Now, we've also talked a bit about Amazon and Kindle. So the next resource, and I do consider them a big resource, is Kindle Direct Publishing, otherwise known as KDP. And you can go to their website at kdp.com and get all the information you need to publish to Kindle, to publish to Amazon. They will help you. And in fact, KDP is where I found my cover designer and interior designer. I've never regretted that one bit. It's worth looking, if you're interested in publishing, it's worth looking at what they have, the information they have. Then there's a Facebook page that I'm going to recommend, and it's 20 books to 50K, and that is 20, I should say, books written out, 2 written out, 50K. The theory of the website is that if you've written 20 books and start selling them, you should be able to make $50,000 a year. Now, obviously, I only have 1 and maybe a half books so far. I'm not in that territory, but here's the important thing about 20 books to 50K. Even though the Facebook page can feel a little bit like the Wild West at times, this is a pool, a huge pool of self-published writers with varying levels of success. But the idea behind the Facebook page is that these are writers helping writers. So if you have questions, if you want to double check that what's happening in your publishing course is right, or if something doesn't feel right and you're just not sure if you should be doing it, this is the place to go and ask some questions. In addition, they have some tremendous information in their resources area for different genres. And so you might want to go there and look at what they say about the different genres that you're interested in. The phrase you'll see on that Facebook page most is "a rising tide floats all boats." And the idea is, if writers work together, instead of, yes, you're competing with each other, but you still can be kind about it. You still can work together to help each other, and everybody wins when you do that. All right, so we've talked about all these things, and now you've got your book and you've started working with it, and you have your website in place, and everything is going well. You have your copies. Now you want to promote this. Okay. This is where a lot of writers will throw up their hands and say, why didn't I get a traditional publisher? Don't worry about that, because a lot of times you're going to be asked to do the same thing for the traditional publisher that you're going to end up doing for a self-published book. So they may help, sort of, but not really. You still need to do an awful lot of work to promote your book. The difference is they have more contacts at their fingertips. You need to work to find them. You can obviously get some help along the way from all these different resources that I've recommended, but basically the work is still yours to do. So you want to make a list of the possible things you can do to promote your book and get the word about your book out there with varying levels of success. This is the kind of thing that I did with Special Risk. I set up my author website. I got business cards and bookmarks that feature the book. I have an Amazon author page, and it's good to do that so that anyone who's looking at your book on Amazon can go to your author page and see that, yes, it is you that published the book. It's just an extra verification. Goodreads has mixed reviews right now, but Goodreads, it's important for you to also have an author page there. You can research online advertising and ads. This is where I say things can be a mixed bag. I had mixed success with Amazon ads. I did get some business from those. They're not costly in many cases. If you run a basic ad or a basic boost through them, it's not terribly costly, and it can boost the visibility of your book up on the website. You want an email list, and this is where I think I fall down the most. I don't really have an email list per se. It's usually attached to your website. What I have is an email list that's generated by my blog. So one of the things, because I was having difficulty using a mail service with my website, one of the things I'm looking at right now is probably using my blog to do more promotion for flood risk. Social media, we've already talked about: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever if you like TikTok, use that. People are starting to use that more and more. But find some places where you like to work and post things, and that's where you want to go with your book information. Probably the worst thing you can do is every day get on there and say, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. Be creative. Think of new ways to approach people with your information. I try to work it in every so often with just a picture of something else. I posted something on Instagram called Today's Coffee, and that's how I tie in my book sometimes, not all the time. The other thing you can do is just what I'm doing here today: public speaking. Talk to people about your book. Promote your book with other people, not just one-on-one. Go do that little talk for the state library that someone asks you to do. You can also go to your local bookstores and have them arrange, if not a talk, maybe just a signing that you can do there. I did several of those right after Special Risk came out, and they were very productive. Another thing I did was book events. I did some some book events that I was able to take my books and promote to a whole new area. And so it was very helpful to me to do that. And one of the things I want to tell you about is something that's coming up. I'm going to be taking Special Risk and also information about flood risk to the Books event. It's coming up on September 18th. It'll be at the Barn at Creek's Bend in Carlisle, and it's from noon to 4. This is really a big event. It's over 50 authors bringing their books. They'll have them there for you to buy, and they'll sign them for you. You get a chance to chat with them a little bit. It's a very exciting thing to do, to go meet authors in person that you either have been following for a while or just someone new that you haven't, whose books you haven't read before. I plan to be there with my Special Risk copies. I'm going to have a sign-up sheet for flood risk. And so this will be a good time to catch me and see if I have more information, for one thing, on flood risk. So that's one of the things you can do. In the meantime, you can also contact me, or find me at least. You can also contact me through Facebook. I'm on there as Sandy Nork or Sandy Nork Author. There's also Instagram. I've talked about Instagram a couple times because I really like to take pictures and post them. We talked about my little toys. I like to take pictures of them. And yes, just for kicks, I want to show you, I do have Mr. Bones here with me. But but you can contact me through there as well. And you always can look at my website at sandynork.com. Now, I just want to know, do you have any questions? This is a lot of information, a lot to take in. Probably not everyone is interested in publishing their book today, but these are some of the things that I've noticed.
Yeah, we're a small group here, so if anyone wants to unmute
Yeah,
themselves, or you can also put stuff in the chat. I had a weird sort of an odd question. I was listening to you read, and I thought, does anyone self-publish audiobooks?
yes, they do. I have not researched that enough to give you a whole lot of information. Audio is one area that I'm not that familiar with, and it's probably mostly my fault because I don't use audiobooks very much anymore because I really don't drive that much. And that's when I used to use them a lot. I know it's a huge market, and I know that self-publishers do create their own audios. That's as far as I can go on that for you.
That's cool. The other thing I was thinking of is one of my favorite authors is from the UK. His name is Tom Cox. And
Yes.
his publishing company, I think it's called Unbound Publishing.
Okay. Yes.
They do they sort of like crowdfund books from like the outset, and then when his book is published, it has a list of all the people that have contributed to his to his next book in it. And I think that he promotes by like sending out, he'll send an email to you with with little snippets of, he writes
Right.
sort of humorous stories, and
Right.
stuff, and it really gets you going. So you want to support him so you can read a whole novel of his work.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
thought that was a neat way to do it.
That is a neat way to do it, and it's something that I haven't looked into. There are some websites out there that allow you to sort of fund an author while they work. I've always been, personally, I've always been a little uncomfortable doing that, but maybe this is something too I should be looking into. Like I say, sometimes getting me to move forward in areas is a little tough, but I'm learning as I go. So, and that is the important thing with this. You have to keep learning. You keep writing, yes, but you keep learning. You learn about writing, you learn about selling, you learn about packaging, you learn about all of these things. And you just have to try to move along with the companies. For example, yesterday I just got an update from Ingram Books, and I'm going to have to take a look at that and see how that's going to affect me. It's going to affect costs for sure, and the ability to get quantities of books from them. Small quantities are certainly less interesting to them than the big companies, large quantities. So it'll be an interesting read for me, I'm sure. I just got that yesterday. So any other questions?
Kathy added one to the chat.
Oh,
what
okay.
was the most difficult hurdle you had to surmount to get your books published? And she also wrote, you need to do a book of your coffee.
Yeah, I know. I do think about that every so often. And I also, the other thing I think about is doing a series that features a character who loves coffee, because that would be much more like me, I think, than Valerie Sloan is. But I don't know, who knows? That may show up in one of the Sloan mysteries too. I don't know. The most difficult hurdle, I think, I think promotion is probably my biggest hurdle, because I'm so hesitant to do it. I'm so hesitant to put myself out there very much. Part of it is, just my own personal level of energy. As I say, I didn't start this until I actually retired from work. So that should tell you something right there. But I think that was my most difficult hurdle. You got to remember that with all the places that I talk about that has resources for writers, if you follow their suggestions and just take it one step at a time, you can really work your way through this. It's not as difficult as it all sounds. It can sound, when I put this program together, I thought, this is just, it feels so overwhelming. But I did it. I got through it. And yes, when I started, it felt overwhelming. But then you start doing, well, let's do this today, and let's do that tomorrow, and let's do, and eventually it gets done. And that's how I approach things now. I just try to do it one step at a time and focus in one area at a time. Any other questions? Well, I really appreciate everyone coming to hear me rattle on about self-publishing and about my books. I hope you come to the Books event in Carlisle. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. And I certainly hope that you all, any of you who are writing now, please keep writing, keep learning. Thanks for joining us for Lunch and Learn, and enjoy the journey.
Thank you, Sandy. Kathy added another question for you
Ah.
as a good book.
How many pages do I write in a day?
Yeah.
Oh, this is the classic story. For me, it depends how many hours I get to put in. I can write about 500 words an hour. And most days when I'm literally working on the book, I write about 2 hours. So it's about 1,000 words a sitting. It would be great if I could tolerate sitting longer than that. But a lot of days I need to move around more than that. So right now, my best days run between 1,000 and 1,500 words. And if you want to go take that idea one step further, the average self-published book can run anywhere from, well, it runs any length really, but for a novel, you want to have probably about 60,000 words to 90,000 words, unless you're writing science fiction and fantasy, which runs more to 120,000 words for the book. So it gives you an idea. For a 60,000 word book, it's going to take me 60 days to write it. If I can manage to do 60 days in a row, 2 hours a day, that's how it would work. Any other questions? Oh, you are welcome, Connie.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Sandy. And I want to remind everyone, this was like a huge amount of information.
It's a huge amount. I
And
sort of apologize for that.
it's so involved, like you think about, oh, I want to be an author and I like to write. And then there's all these other things you have to think about,
Yeah.
when it gets to this stage.
Yeah.
But I want to remind everybody that this will be recorded and we will have it up on our website. So if anyone needs to go back and refer to a certain point, or if they can recommend it to someone else who's starting out. And we can also share this with Sandy, so it'll be on her, whatever she wants to put it on her
Yes,
website.
I'll be sure
too.
to put that on,
Yep.
In several places, actually.
Right.
I need to put that. Also, I think having gone through all this with you and probably confused many people, I think I'll put together a list, particularly of the resource areas that I chose, so that you can take a closer look at them. You can go to them, and I'll try to put that on my website later today.
Thank you so much, Sandy.
Thank you.
And
Thank
thank
you all very
everyone
much.
for joining us today. Have a good day and check back on our website and visit Sandy's webpage. Thank you.
Thank you.